Hey guys, what's up? This is Brittany King. This is going to be a different episode for American Shade. I just got this notification about a debate between Jordan Peterson and Reverend Michael Dyson. And I've talked about Jordan Peterson with Benjamin Boyce in the last interview that I did this month. And Michael Dyson is someone that I didn't necessarily have an issue with. I didn't really follow his work, but I think a year ago I started really listening to him, and I have kind of an issue with him. But this debate I hear is very intense, to say the least. And this debate actually was, I think, in 2018. And they were discussing, along with two other panelists, the notion of political correctness, and if that harbors the space for freedom of speech to ensue in an authentic way. So I'm just gonna watch it and react and then talk about it, I guess. I'm going to start this. It's about 20 minutes and I'll stop.
When it comes to gender. Why do you think that's one of the primal sins, in your view, of quote, political correctness?
Well, I think it's one of the primal sins of identity politics players on the left and the right, just to be clear about that. Personally, since this has got personal at times, I'm no fan of the identitarian right. I think that anybody who plays a game, a conceptual game where group identity comes first and foremost, risks an exacerbation of tribalism. It doesn't matter whether it's on the left or the right. With regards to the idea of group rights, well, there's a fundamental, and this is something we've fallen into terribly in Canada, not least because we had to contend with the threat of Quebec separatism. But the idea of group rights is extraordinarily problematic because the obverse of the coin of individual rights is individual responsibilities. And you can hold an individual responsible, and an individual can be responsible. And so that's partly why individuals have rights. But groups, how do you hold a group responsible? I mean, the whole idea it's not a good idea to hold a group responsible. First of all, it flies in the face of the idea of the sort of justice systems that we've laid out in the West that are essentially predicated first on the assumption of individual innocence, but also on the possibility of individual guilt, not group guilt. We saw what happened in the 20th century many, many times when the idea of group guilt was enabled to get a foothold, let's say, in the polity and in the justice system. It was absolutely catastrophic. And so, okay, fine, group rights. Well, how are you going to contend with the alternative to that, the opposite of that? Well, where's the group responsibility? How are you going to hold your groups responsible? Well, we don't have to talk about that because we're too concerned with rectifying historical injustices, hypothetical and otherwise. And that's certainly not to say that there weren't any shortage of absolutely catastrophic historical injustices. That's not the point. The point is how you view the situation at the most fundamental level. And group rights are an absolute catastrophe, in my opinion.
Well, Michelle, come in on that point.
The reason that Trump and Brexit in Britain and all kinds of nativists all over Europe are succeeding is not the triumph of the right, it's the catastrophic failure of the left. It's our fault. We absolutely... My point is not that I've turned to the right or anything like that, or that I'm nice and fluffy and want everybody to be decent. I'm saying fuck political correctness. Resist. Fight. If you have a point of view, fight it in the proper manner, using democracy. It should be, not channels of education, not language. You know, it's so silly. There's a chess rule, you know. In chess, the best move to play in chess is not the best chess move. It's the move your opponent least wants you to play.
So far, I agree with the side. Well, I won't say I don't know the other side's point of view yet, but with Jordan Peterson and this man, I know this guy. I'm so sorry. I can't say his name. Basically, and with him, he was saying, and I don't know why I'm explaining this to you. You guys know what it is. I would say that what he's saying with freedom of speech, people would disagree and say certain people shouldn't be able to say stuff because it might offend people or that it might create hate speech. What he's saying is let people speak. Doesn't mean letting people have a platform doesn't mean you agree with what they're saying on that platform. It means that you are allowing people to say what they want, because in return, that gives you the allowance to say whatever you want. And that by letting people say what they want doesn't mean that you co-sign, right? Or that you're even really complicit in what they're saying. It's saying you have the freedom of speech, the First Amendment right, to say what you would like to say, and I have the right to challenge you. And that's why he was saying, well, fight them. Like, not fight them, but defend your point at all costs, challenge them. But don't say people can't say stuff, because that's not realistic with life. Let's continue.
At the moment, you're being recruiting sergeants for the right, but by annoying and upsetting, and instead of either fighting or persuading. But political correctness is a middle course that simply doesn't work.
Well, first
That's
of all,
my point.
you said be empirical. Now, empirical, as far as I know, the word means that which can be verified or falsified through the senses.
Exactly.
So if we look at it in an objective way, the reality is that people don't have equal access to the means to articulate the very moment you're talking about.
I'm talking about the empirical results of this political attitude.
I understand that, but my point is simply this. I'm suggesting to you that people use the weapons at hand. Now, it was Abraham Joshua Heschel, the rabbi, who said, everybody's not guilty, but everybody's responsible. Right? That's a distinction there. Mm-hmm. Everybody clearly is not guilty. But what's interesting, look at the flip side. If you have benefited from 300 years of holding people in servitude, thinking that you did it all on your own, why can't these people work harder? Let me see, for 300 years, you ain't had no job. So the reality is, for 300 years, you hold people in the bands. You hold them in subordination. You refuse to give them rights. Then all of a sudden, you free them and say you're now individuals, not having the skills, not having the skills. I'm talking about America, first of all. I'm talking about American society, first of all. I'm talking about the Northern Hemisphere. I'm talking about every society where enslavement has existed, but I'm speaking specifically of the repudiation of individual rights among people of color in America who were denied the opportunity to be individuals. So I obviously, and ideally, and I think Michelle Goldberg does too, agree with the emphasis on individuals. What we're saying to you is that we have not been permitted to be individuals. We have not been permitted to exercise our individual autonomy and authority, and the refusal to do so, to recognize me as an individual, means when you roll up on me and I'm a 12-year-old boy in a park and you shoot first in ways you do to black kids that you don't do to white kids, you are not treating that person as an individual. If we're living in a society where women are subject to aberrant forms of horrid, patriarchal, sexist, and misogynist behavior, you are not acknowledging the centrality of the individuality of women. You are treating them according to a group dynamic. And if we get beyond the ability of people on the right to understand the degree to which they have operated from the basis of benefit from group identity without having said, I end by saying this, the great American philosopher Beyonce Knowles said that it has been said that racism is so American that if you challenge racism, you look like you're challenging America. We are challenging inequality. We are challenging the refusal to see me as an individual. When we overcome that, have at it, we're all on equal plane.
I think it's good.
A lot is getting stirred here.
So I've got a couple of questions.
So let's your side spoke, so I'm gonna go to Jordan, then to you.
Let's
Michelle.
assume for a moment that I've benefited from my white privilege. Okay, so let's assume that. That's fine. That's what you would say. So, so let's say here. Let's get precise about this. Okay.
Was that very individual of you?
Let's get precise about this. Okay.
Let's get precise.
To what degree?
I mean, sorry, this is funny. I mean, he just said you to Reverend Michael Dyson. He said, that's what you would say. And he says, that very individual of you. Yes, I said you. You're an individual. I didn't say that's what your people would think. Anywho, continue.
Is my present level of attainment or achievement a consequence of my white privilege? And I don't mean sort of. I mean, do you mean 5%? Do Do you mean 15%? Do you mean 25%? Do you mean 75%? And what do you propose I do about it? How about a tax? How about a tax that's like specialized for me so that I can account for my damn privilege, so that I can stop hearing about it? Now, let's get precise about one other thing, okay? We'll get precise about one other thing. Now,
Precise.
yeah, precise, yes. And so if we can agree, and we haven't, that the left can go too far, which it clearly can, then how would my worthy opponents precisely define when the left that they stand for has gone too far? You didn't like equity, equality of outcome. I think that's a great marker. But if you have a better suggestion and won't sidestep the question, so let's figure out how I can dispense with my white privilege, and so that you can tell me when the left has gone too far, since they clearly can. And that's what this debate is about political correctness. It's about the left going too far. And I think it's gone too far in many ways. And I'd like to figure out exactly how and when, so the reasonable left could make its ascendance again and we could quit all this nonsense.
Okay. Mike, I want to come to you on those. On Jordan's point about how does he, in a sense, get an equal voice in this debate back if it is implied that his participation brings with it this baggage of white privilege that doesn't allow him to see clearly the issues that are before us.
But that is to be complicit in the very problem itself terminologically. You're beginning at a point that's already productive and controversial. You're saying, how can he get his equality back? Who are you talking about? Jordan Peterson, trending #1 on Twitter? Jordan Peterson with an international bestseller? I want him to tweet something out about me in my book. Jordan Peterson, right? This is what I'm saying to you. Why the rage, bruh? You're doing well, but you're a mean, mad white man. And you're going to get us right. And I have never seen so much wine and snowflaking. There's enough wine in here to start a vineyard. And what I'm saying to you empirically and precisely, when you ask the question about white privilege, the fact that you ask it in the way you did, dismissive, pseudoscientific, non-empirical, and without justification, the truth is that white privilege doesn't act according to quantifiable segments. It's about the degree to which we are willing as a society to grapple with the ideals of freedom, justice, and equality upon which it's based. Number two, what's interesting to me.
Have to pause. This is one reason why I don't really like Michael Dyson that much. Michael Dyson, like I said, I don't follow him that much, but I know that he is highly regarded as a reverend, as an author, writer. I'm not sure if he's an educator, but for him to say, you're a mean, mad white man, and to say, basically your life is great. You're Jordan Peterson, you have New York bestseller. I'm pretty sure during this time, this is when Jordan Peterson's wife was really sick, where Jordan Peterson himself was really, really getting ill, I'm pretty sure. So just the irony of him saying this to him and not knowing like the illnesses that Jordan was dealing with. I think though, to play devil's advocate for Dyson, if he doesn't know this, he would get irritated, I guess, if someone that he assumes is privileged, that's white, and not even necessarily white privilege, just privileged economically. He would assume Jordan's economically privileged because of the New York Times bestseller, and because I guess Jordan was really becoming popular, and that he would assume that you are working within more white privilege now than ever before, and you still don't see it. And I'm guessing that's where his frustration's coming from, playing devil's advocate, trying to be objective here. The thing is, Dyson is in the same room as Jordan. Dyson is battling Jordan. Dyson is having a debate with Jordan Peterson. Therefore, you are also in a privileged space with Jordan. So it's like Michael Dyson isn't, and I'm sure he realizes this, but by calling Jordan privilege, are you privileged in proxy because you're able to be in a space where he is? You're not being asked to be there just because you're a Black man. You're not being asked to be there because they need someone that opposes the side that they're on. You're being asked to be there because clearly you are as highly regarded as Jordan, or in the same class, so to speak, of public intellects that you would be considered for this forum as well. So it's like you're not in the crowd, or you're not home typing in why are you so upset? Why you're on the stage with Jordan debating. It's just not acknowledging that is lost on me. So let's see this.
You're talking about not having a collective identity. What do you call a nation? Are you Canadian? Are you Canadian by yourself? Are you an individual? Or are you part of a group? When America formed its union, it did so in opposition to another group. So the reality is that those who are part of group identities in politics deny the legitimacy and validity of those groups and the fact that they have been created thusly, and then have resentment against others. All I'm asking for is the opportunity. The quotation you talk about, the difference between equality of outcome and equality of opportunity, that's a staid and retried argument, hackneyed phrase derived from the halcyon days of the debate over affirmative action. Are you looking for outcomes that can be determined equally, or are you looking for opportunity? If you free a person after a whole long time of oppression and say now you are free to survive, if you have no skills, if you have no quantifiable means of existence, what you have done is liberated them into oppression. And all I'm suggesting to you, Lyndon Baines Johnson, one of our great presidents, said, if you start a man in a race 100 years behind, it is awfully difficult to catch up. So I don't think Jordan Peterson is suffering from anything except an exaggerated sense of entitlement and resentment, and his own privilege is invisible to him, and it's manifest with lethal intensity and ferocity right here on stage.
Jordan, you'd like to respond to that if you like. Well, what I derive from that series of rebuttals, let's say, is twofold. The first is that saying that the radical left goes too far when they engage in violence is not a sufficient response by any stretch of the imagination, because there are sets of ideas in radical leftist thinking that led to the catastrophes of the 20th century. And that was at the level of idea, not at the level of violent action. It's a very straightforward thing to say you're against violence. It's like being against poverty. It's like, you know, generically speaking, decent people are against poverty and violence. It doesn't address the issue in the least. And with regards to my privilege or lack thereof, I mean, I'm not making the case that I haven't had advantages in my life and disadvantages in my life like most people. You don't know anything about my background or where I came from. It doesn't matter to you because fundamentally I'm a mean white man. That's a hell of a thing to say in a debate.
The mean man white comment was not predicated upon my historical excavation of your past. It's based upon the evident vitriol with which you speak and the denial of a sense of equanimity among combatants in an argument. So I'm saying again, you're a mean mad white man, and the viciousness is evident.
Okay.
Reset. Change the decks here. Let's bring Jordan in on this because you've written and commented about a lot. Thank you.
Well, I think I'm going to point out two things again. The first is that my question about when the left goes too far still hasn't been answered. And then the second thing I'm going to point out is that, you know, it's conceivable that I am a mean man. You know, I mean, maybe I'm meaner than some people and not as mean as others. I think that's probably more the case. But I would say the fact that race got dragged into that particular comment is a better exemplar of what the hell I think is wrong with the politically correct left than anything else that could have possibly happened.
Imagine the hurt, the anxiety, the insult that you might genuinely feel, according to what I felt was an appropriate comment of description at the moment of its expression. But imagine now those hurt feelings and when, okay, you feel great. You feel great about it.
It's really different. I'm not a victim. I'm not hurt.
You're not hurt. Okay, you wouldn't be a victim. So what's interesting is that whatever non-traditional feelings of empathy you endure at this particular point, the point is, imagine then the horrors that so many others have had to put up with for so long when they are refused to acknowledge their humanity. Now, I take your point seriously.
So your group
let me finish. Let me finish, though. Let me finish, sir. You're not my inquisitioner, okay? What I'm saying to you is that when you said you were upset that I added the element of race there, right? When I said mean, mad, white man. Well, what's interesting is that you may have felt that you were being ascribed a group identity to which you do not subscribe. You may have felt that you were being unfairly judged according to your particular race. You may have felt that your individual identity was being besmirched by my rather careless characterization of you, all of which qualifies for a legitimate response to me, but also the point we've been trying to make about the refusal to see our individual existence as women, as people of color, as First Nation people and the like. My point simply has been, the reason I talked about race in that particular characterization, because there's a particular way in which I have come to a city. I don't know if there are a lot of Black people out here, not sure, but I constantly come to places and spaces that are not my natural habitat. Other than intellectual engagement and the love and the fury of rhetorical engagement, yes. But I often go into hostile spaces where people will not vote in favor for my particular viewpoint because I'm interested as an individual of breaking down barriers so that people can understand just how complicated it is. So what I'm saying to you is that I would invite you, in terms of the surrender of your privilege, to give you a specific response. Come with me to a Black Baptist church. Come with me to a historically Black college. Come to me to an indigenous or First Nations community where we're able to engage in some of the lovely conversation, but also to listen and hear. And when I added race to that, I was talking about the historically evinced inability to acknowledge others' pains equally to the one that they are presently enduring. So as a human being, I love you, my brother, but I stand by my comment.
Well, I've seen the sorts of.
So with Dyson's side, he is saying because Jordan was being dismissal of his point prior to all of this, that he was exhibiting the privilege of a white man, and he was calling him a mean, mad white man and saying, you shouldn't even be mad because you're white. And then, but Jordan's point was true. Like, okay, call me mean and mad, but why is whiteness relevant? To Dyson, it's relevant because from his eyes, when he looks at things racialized. So he doesn't see Jordan as a man. He sees him as a white man. And Jordan being dismissive of what he was saying, or the point he was trying to make, he sees it as, here's another white person dismissing this antidote coming from this Black man being him. And this is his privilege being smeared all over me. But Jordan sees Dyson as a man. So, and doesn't realize and doesn't understand why race is a part of the debate, especially with someone that wants to be politically correct. So yes, him pointing that out, it's pretty ironic. It's like, yeah, you guys want political correctness, but then you want to throw in a racial epithet at him, but you want political correctness. You can't have both. And I guess it is a double standard. If you want political correctness, you want in the way of isolating or vetting freedom of speech in a way where the offense is caught in a net and it doesn't like spill out into a public sphere, but then you just called someone in a public sphere like this forum a mean, mad white man. I can only imagine if Jordan turned around and called him a mean black man. I couldn't even, there would be a huge gasp if that happened. And he would have then said, you're racist. And then the event would have been ended and all this. I don't know. This debate, it's just one side. One side is more about freedom of speech. And I guess do see people in an individual state. The other side, well, I don't know what that woman feels because I didn't hear her speak. But Dyson sees people as groups, collective, as those two men in a collective because of their skin color, even though I think one is from the UK and then one's from Canada. But nonetheless, in a group because they're white. And I think that's the problem. This is coming from someone who very much, I'm still, working on sifting through, figuring out identity and what it means and all this stuff. But I am seeing more and more and more and more. And like things like this is really opening my eyes up to how racializing everything actually does more damage than good. And just with the example of knowing Jordan Peterson's background with his health and with his wife, and then having someone say, Jordan's fine, he's just this, he's mean and mad and white. Like, I can just imagine how Jordan feels like, you have no idea what I'm going through, and you think I'm privileged because I have a New York bestseller. And sure, you can say privileged because in a societal way, even if he wasn't Jordan Peterson, if he just was a Jordan Peterson that no one knows, there are certain things that he might benefit from because of his color. But to just say generally, your life is perfect or your life is fine, there's no reason for you to be this passionate, is dismissive. And if it happened to Dyson, he would not, this event would not allow it, I don't think. So let's continue.
The things that you're talking about. I happen to be an honorary member of an Indigenous family, so don't tell me about what I should go see with regards to oppression. You don't know anything about me.
You asked me a question, I gave you a response.
Yeah. You gave me a generic response.
It's not
generic race-based response.
Jordan Peterson, I would like for you to come with me, Michael Eric Dyson, to a Black Baptist church. You been to one of those?
I would be happy to do that.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna hook you up.
Good. So I'm not here to claim that there's no such thing as oppression, unfairness, brutality, discrimination, unfair use of power, all of those. Anyone with any sense knows that hierarchical structures tilt towards tyranny and that we have to be constantly wakeful to ensure that all they are isn't power and tyranny. It's interesting to hear Foucault referred to. It's unfortunate, but it's interesting. Because Foucault, like his French intellectual confreres, essentially believed that the only basis upon which hierarchies were established is power. And that's part of this pernicious politically correct doctrine that I've been speaking about. When a hierarchy becomes corrupt, then the only way to ascend it is to exercise power. That's essentially the definition of a tyranny. But that doesn't mean that the imperfect hierarchies that we have constructed in our relatively free countries, which at least tilt somewhat towards competence and ability, as evidenced by the staggering achievements of civilization that we've managed to produce. It doesn't mean that the appropriate way of diagnosing them is to assume without reservation unidimensionally, that they're all about power. And as a consequence, everyone who occupies any position within them is a tyrant or a tyrant in the making. And that is certainly the fundamental claim of someone like Foucault. And it's part and parcel of this, what would you call it, this ideological catastrophe that's political correctness. I'm not here to argue against progress. I'm not here to argue against equality of opportunity. Anyone with any sense understands that even if you're selfish, you're best served by allowing yourself access to the multiplicitous talents of everyone, and to discriminate against them for arbitrary reasons unrelated to their competences. It's abhorrent. That has nothing to do with the issue at hand. It isn't that good things haven't happened in the past and should continue to happen. That's not the point. The point is the point my compatriot Fry made, which is, well, we can agree on the catastrophe and we can agree on the historic inequity, but there's no way I'm going to agree that political correctness is the way to address any of that. And there's plenty of evidence to the contrary, some of which I would say was displayed quite clearly tonight.
Well, that's the end of that. Oh, that was interesting. All right, first I have to say, I don't like how this looks. First, I have to say the con side of the political correctness debate that we just saw. Basically, the side of Jordan Peterson, the other guy, won to me. I'm like 80% non-politically correct, and 20% I am, because I just know I have to be in certain situations. I'm definitely not for political correctness. And I'm a big proponent for freedom of speech and challenging any speech as well. Like any speech out there, any content put out there, challenge it if you do not agree. But you cannot keep people from saying what they want. I would not want that for me. Therefore, you have to fight for that freedom for everybody. Dyson is, I would say, I mean, I hate to say this, he's kind of just like a cliche. Like, I already knew this stuff he was going to say before he says it, because it's kind of like I've heard this so many times. And sometimes I think he plays up for the audience more so than having a debate or a conversation with the other person. I just see that theme with him. And I think that's actually one thing that bothers me, aside from what he says. It's more of how he says it and why he does his, dramatic whatever. Like, it's just like, why are you playing to the audience? It's like he's looking for an applause rather than looking for having a chance to have a quality dialogue. With that said, comment below and tell me what you think, who won, who didn't win. Tell me if you like these type of videos. I just saw this pop up. I decided that why not watch it? It's very late and I just wanted to do it on the fly. So let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. And I don't like Beyonce. I like Aaliyah. So yeah. Peace.